The Barents Sea was peaceful and quiet. The midnight waters appeared undisturbed. Under the cloak of darkness, HMS Conqueror, one of the Royal Navy's Churchill-class nuclear submarines, featuring unlimited range and a devastating arsenal of state-of-the-art torpedoes, slowly glided through the icy depths in search of her objective. The sophisticated sensors, sonar, and radar systems gave the crew the latest information about their surroundings. Everyone was quiet in the dimly lit control room until the submarine made contact with 2 Soviet ships. It was time to execute Operation Barmaid, an operation the Royal Navy and the U.S. Navy had been planning since the summer of 1982. The target, a top-secret Soviet sonar array. The crew knew that success could give NATO a critical advantage in submarine warfare, but failure could escalate tensions to the brink of conflict, a risk they were willing to take for the greater good. As HMS Conqueror positioned herself beneath the unsuspecting Soviet vessel, the commander gave the order. With precision and stealth, Conqueror's pair of remote-controlled heavy steel cutting-edge blades began cutting the Soviet sonar array. The crew was committed but nervous. A single wrong moment could prove fatal. If the Soviets detected them, Conqueror was doomed, and Britain and NATO would face war against the might of the USSR. The daring raid begins with the Churchill-class nuclear-powered submarines developed for the British Royal Navy in the early 1970s. Also known as the Repeat Valiant class, these mighty stealth hunters would serve the United Kingdom with distinction through the last 3 decades of the Cold War that divided the world between the West and the East, the Free World and the Iron Curtain. The lead vessel of the class was named after former World War I hero, British Prime Minister and First Lord of the Admiralty Sir Winston Churchill. The second submarine was HMS Conqueror, and the third was HMS Courageous. All 3 were developed and designed to meet the Royal Navy's growing need for a capable and versatile attack submarine fleet that could counter the expanding Soviet naval threat that loomed over Western Europe. The submarines were ordered to replace the aging Valiant-class fleet boats. They were designed to incorporate advanced nuclear propulsion technology, allowing longer submerged endurance and greater operational flexibility than earlier diesel-electric submarines. HMS Churchill, the lead submarine of the class, was ordered in late October 1965, the very same year in which the United States of America went to war against the Communist North Vietnamese army that threatened to take over the democratic South. Their predecessor, the Valiant class, influenced the overall design of the Churchill-class submarines, but with several enhancements to improve performance and versatility. A crew of 103 sailors operated the stealthy but heavy Hunters, which weighed over 4,900 tons submerged. They were about 285 feet long and 33 feet in beam, with a draft of 27 feet, making them relatively large and capable of extended deployments. The Churchills were powered by a Rolls-Royce PWR pressurized water-cooled nuclear reactor, coupled with steam turbines driving 2 shafts, producing over 20,000 shaft horsepower. Such an incredible powerhouse allowed the heavy submarines to reach a top speed of over 28 knots submerged, and could operate submerged for extended periods without surfacing. The range was unlimited, as long as the crew had access to food supplies. Besides this groundbreaking feature, the Churchills also packed highly advanced sonar systems for the time, including bow and towed array sonars. These provided enhanced capabilities for detecting enemy vessels at greater distances and with higher accuracy. These were the Kelvin Type 1006 surface search radar and the Type 2001 sonar array that was later replaced by a Type 2020 array with a Type 2026 towed array. All 3 Churchill submarines were equipped with 6 21-inch bow torpedo tubes and could carry up to 30 torpedoes and submarine-launched anti-ship missiles. The typical armament included Tigerfish and later Spearfish torpedoes, with UGM-84 Harpoon missiles that drastically increased the submarine's attack distance. The Churchills could also be configured to lay mines in enemy waters, further enhancing their utility in naval warfare. Due to their unlimited range and arsenal, these submarines could perform various missions, from anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare to surveillance, reconnaissance, and support for special forces operations. HMS Conqueror, the second submarine in the class, was ordered in August 1966 and laid down at Camel Laird's Birkenhead a year later. She was finally launched in 1969, after several delays due to sabotage of the submarine's gearbox. While HMS Conqueror protected the waters of Western Europe from the Red Menace, the military junta in Argentina decided to settle, once and for all, the territorial disputes the American country had with the United Kingdom over the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands, or Islas Malvinas, as they were called in Spanish. The South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands were also part of this ongoing controversy between both nations. Argentina claimed these territories as part of its national heritage, while the islands had been a British overseas territory since the early 19th century. Tensions escalated with Argentina due to economic and political pressure from the national regime. The Argentine military junta, led by General Leopoldo Galtieri, sought to distract the populace from domestic issues and rallied public support through nationalist sentiment by seizing the Falklands. Although not rich in resources at the time, the control of the islands held significant symbolic and strategic value. The proximity to Antarctica, potential oil reserves, and exclusive economic fishing zones were of considerable value for the UK. Nonetheless, the Argentine military junta believed that due to the 8,000-mile distance between the Falklands and the UK, the Britons would not commit significant assets to defend the distant island. They were wrong. One day after the Argentinians invaded the Falklands with the Army, Navy, and Air Force, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher quickly assembled a naval task force on April 2, 1982. The Royal Navy's response comprised over 100 ships, including 2 aircraft carriers, HMS Hermes and Invincible, and several destroyers, frigates, and submarines, including HMS Conqueror, who set sail from Faslane Naval Base, Scotland, during the evening of the same day. Argentina was off to a rough start and a surprise once its troops sighted the impressive British task force on the horizon of the Falklands. Under orders of Commander Chris Reeford Brown, HMS Conqueror arrived on the exclusion zone shores 21 days after the war between the UK and Argentina began. The commander's orders were clear: seek out and hunt down Argentine warships, especially the most valuable ones, such as the 25 de Mayo aircraft carrier. On April 30th, HMS Conqueror detected an Argentine task force some 100 nautical miles off her location. The task force comprised several ex-US Navy vessels, including 2 destroyers, ARA Piedra Buena and ARAR Bouchard, and light cruiser General Belgrano. All 3 vessels were sailing southwest of the Falklands, seeking to make way around the British exclusion zone. Nonetheless, Admiral Sandy Woodward, the task force commander, suspected an attempted pincer movement that could cut off logistical support routes and requested permission to attack the enemy ships. Soon, the Argentinian command realized that the aircraft carrier 25 de Mayo was not yet battle-ready. As a result, the Belgrano retreated from its battle position. Despite this, British intelligence was sure this was just the beginning of a hostile build-up to what intercepted messages described as a massive attack on the British task force. Thus, the Admiralty ordered HMS Conqueror to approach and engage the enemy formation. While the submarine approached the enemy convoy, General Belgrano broke into formation and turned west. Conqueror went after her and moved into combat formation on May 2nd. General Belgrano, known initially as USS Phoenix, was a part of the Brooklyn-class light cruisers introduced by the U.S. Navy during World War II. The ship was commissioned in 1938 and decommissioned in 1946, before being transferred to Argentina in 1951. She displaced 12,300 long tons and was armed with 15 6-inch main guns, 8 5-inch 25 caliber secondary guns, and a battery of 40mm and 20mm anti-aircraft guns. What made General Belgrano a severe threat to the Royal Navy was her armament of French Exocet anti-ship missiles that could wreak havoc on every British ship within their range. With Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's permission, HMS Conqueror's crew prepared to launch a stealth torpedo attack against General Belgrano. The hunter approached her prey and furiously launched 3 torpedoes at 2:57 p.m. 2 landed critical hits, dooming Belgrano's crew for good. 20 minutes after impact, Captain Hector Bonzo ordered to abandon ship. Although 722 men survived, 323 souls went to the depths with Belgrano. Thus, HMS Conqueror became the only nuclear-powered submarine ever to destroy an enemy asset in direct combat operations. The sinking of the ship was controversial despite the achievement. The Argentine government complained to the United Nations that the sinking of their warship had contravened UN Security Council Resolution 502, which had called for a ceasefire. Nonetheless, Conqueror's sinking of Belgrano paved the way for British dominance of the sea, bringing the war against Argentina to an end in June 1982. Following the war's end, HMS Conqueror was called to action for a one-of-a-kind top-secret operation that relied heavily not on her torpedo arsenal, but on her stealth capabilities and unlimited range to retrieve a heavily guarded Soviet artifact. During the summer of 1982, Western intelligence gathered valuable information about the Soviet Union's latest experiments and prototypes being tested for implementation within the Soviet Navy. The United States Navy concluded one of them was an Eastern Bloc undersea listening device, and with the cooperation of the British Royal Navy, wanted to verify if this Soviet innovation was an authentic Soviet innovation and not a copycat version of NATO's technologies. This Russian device was a long, thick metal cable equipped with highly effective underwater microphones designed to be towed by a submarine or surface vessel. Also known as a line-towed array sensor, this device was a type of passive sonar system used on Soviet submarines and was critical for detecting and tracking underwater threats, especially from Western submarines. If fully functional, this Soviet asset could shift the balance of maritime power and east-west espionage between the US and the Soviet Union. The device emitted no noise, making it challenging to learn about the array without physically examining it. Therefore, the United States and the United Kingdom decided to steal one. The plan was to approach the Soviet ship towing the array, a Polish-flagged intelligence vessel, from behind and use the pincers to cut the variety loose. The capture of this technology aimed to provide Western military analysts with insights into the acoustic capabilities of Soviet submarines, which were shrouded in secrecy. Understanding these capabilities would allow NATO forces to develop countermeasures and enhance submarine warfare tactics. Thus, the British Royal Navy launched Operation Barmaid to capture this underwater Soviet device for deep analysis with their American allies. Upon returning to the homeland, HMS Conqueror was fitted with remote-controlled heavy steel cutting-edge blades and sophisticated cameras to capture the underwater device without alarming the enemy. The crew was given the new orders and immediately dispatched to the Barents Sea to accomplish the top-secret operation. Despite her sophisticated stealth capabilities and the readiness of the crew, HMS Conqueror's mission was far from easy. First, Conqueror had to intercept the Soviet intelligence ships, which may or may not occur in international waters. Second, she had to accomplish the mission with total secrecy, avoiding detection by the passive sonar array. Any detection would mean immediate and lethal reprisal by the Soviet Union, leading to a new rise in tensions with the Western powers. Third, the Conqueror had to operate while the Soviet vessels were moving. Although details about how the operation unfolded remain classified, the submarine traveled to the Barents and with patient navigation was able to track down the Soviet vessels. HMS Conqueror slowly rose upwards beneath the trawler to avoid attracting attention, and she placed herself beneath the engine propellers. She then used her unconventional equipment to cut through the cable to make the break look like an accident. Meanwhile, the other pair grabbed the severed section before it sank to the sea floor. None of the Soviet ships noticed they'd been robbed of their precious artifact and continued their travel, while HMS Conqueror vanished from the scene, bound for the United Kingdom. Upon arrival at her home in Scotland, British divers retrieved the cable. They transferred it to Prestwick Airport for a flight across the Atlantic for delivery with the US Navy, where the Americans inspected and studied the captured listening device. As for the Soviets, they never realized anything about HMS Conqueror's secret operation and believed the disappearance of their testing device was a mere malfunction. HMS Conqueror was decommissioned in 1990, just as the Soviet Union crumbled and the Cold War ended. The submarine's periscopes, captain's cabin, and central panel from the control room are currently on display at the Royal Navy Submarine Museum in Gosport. As of 2019, the Conqueror is one of 20 nuclear submarines held in storage by the Ministry of Defense, awaiting final disposal.